You hear the one more round chants from the crowd.
Well, this video isn't late at all, I promise. Before we get started, I just want to let you know what the series is going to be. I won't be covering the entire game because that would take too long and you'd be bored by the end of it. Instead, I will just be covering the rounds that I found important, interesting, or were just a highlight round.
Hit that like button and let's just jump into it.
Astralis and DZ played against each other on this map during the Charlotte Grand Final. Going into this game, I was hoping to see Astralis had improved because there were a few rounds where it was questionable. They shouldn't have lost it. There weren't any crazy bans with attackers being Flores, Nook, and then defenders being Azami, Mira. Now, I'll basically be covering just the first half of this game as I don't really have much to say about the second half. Something interesting I noticed about the first round was Forest on the Oryx. As you can see here, they're opening up vertical on CC, and throughout the round, Oryx is downstairs in customs, kind of just making noise. I think the idea here was to use the Oryx as kind of a bait, and through that, the people playing vertical could get the kills, if anyone would take that bait. DZ do end up first picking Forest, however, I think it's successful because if they're picking it to bait and make noise, then it worked. They focused in on him and they wasted about a minute off the clock, despite not being able to get the trade from the vertical above. Now I do want you to take note of DZ getting the first pick, because later on, that fact's going to start getting frustrating. Despite getting the first pick, DZ isn't able to push the advantage and Astralis ends up taking the round in a pretty standard fashion. In round 2, DZ get the first pick again, but the drone denial from Mute and the intel gathering from Pulse ends up being too much for them to push the advantage again, and Astralis are up 2-0. Now round 3 is where I mauled a little bit. Two things I want you to note right off the bat. Canadian on Dokkaebi, and DZ get the first pick. Again. Now this is where the League players start question mark pinging. Hyper and Canadian start pushing east stairs, and it seems like this would be a good play. You have Finka on one side, the Dokkaebi on the other side, and if one of them dies, the other should get the trade, right? Well,
to account for the fact that their numbers have dwindled.
That's what they gotta do. They gotta get in there and fight. But once again, I saw two members. They swing immediately onto Hyper, and he's off the board. Now NTR follows Troop, and it's just Eclipse and Canadian.
Yeah. Canadian gets left in a 1vx situation, and get the cams. Get the cams. You have 4 dead teammates. You can get the cams. For the love of God, get the cams. You're playing Dokkaebi, Canadian. Get the goddamn cams. You're even shooting one. You know they're up. Astralis up 3-0. Now, because I know how this community is, one of you's probably thinking, Shifty, he can't get the cams because there's a hole in the wall. Let me show you something. Now, follow me on this one because it's very complex. There's a mechanic in this game called proning. There's also a mechanic called long arming. Make sense? Cool. Let's move on. Round 4 is when DZ are finally able to get on the board. They take the first pick again, but this time they're able to push that lead. Afterwards, they slow it down and begin another discovery phase. This allows the two players in jail to connect a nade from below, as well as catch Forrest being overly aggressive as he tried to swing the jail players. J9O makes a solid effort during the 1v5, but DZ closed out the round regardless.
Now this is the part where the round breaks down.
Round 5 is pretty great. Once again, it starts off with DZ getting the first pick with NGR taking out TP Fire. Shortly after, Canadians picked up by Forrest to even the man count. Then, Iconic takes out Hyper on Ace, leaving DZ with no hard breach halfway into the round. Forrest does well to waste time by keeping NGR and Pambazoo worrying about him around Passport. After wasting about 40 seconds, they finally take him out and even the man count. A 3v3 quickly becomes a 1v3 for Iconic, and the King makes his play.
And I took that personally.
With a kill onto Eclipse, he gets Diffuser down in Archives. He leaves his Nitro on the case, then he rotates to 90, and DZ are unable to drone him as the last two push from Armory. With insane timing, Iconic triggers his Nitro to deny Pamba picking up the Diffuser, and wins the round as time runs out.
And the lineup onto the buck with the clock saying 0. Count your lucky stars, literally. No. Astralis takes the round.
And Batman proves to everybody why he's iconic.
The hell are you supposed to be?
I'm vengeance.
Last round of this half ends pretty standard. DZ using the Jackal and Dokkaebi to isolate the roamers. Once they're finished with the roam clear, they've pushed the last two players back into sight, so they proceed with the execute, plant, and win it in post-plant. Astralis win their defensive half 4-2, there's no denying that. Now, you ready for that frustrating fun fact that I mentioned before? DZ were 6 for 6 on first pick, and yet this half ends 4-2. I hate to say it, but This is not the DZ that we saw at the Major, and it was a little disappointing from them. They do end up pulling it back a bit in the defending half, bringing it to 5-5, but they let it slip between their fingers, and Astralis ends up winning 7-5, getting the revenge from the Charlotte Grand Final. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. I know it's not as detailed as other VOD reviews, but I kind of wanted to take it a different approach, not bore you to sleep with all this information. I wanted to make it more entertaining to watch. At the end of the day, I did enjoy watching this game. I always love watching both of these teams play, and it's nice to see that Astralis are looking stronger on border than they did during the Major. I'd also like to remind everyone that I'm just some dude on the internet, and these are just my thoughts about this game. Mainly trying to do this to learn from these games, as I myself am trying to compete in R6. I could be wrong. There's probably a slew of opinions in the comments about how I'm wrong, but
It is what it is. It is what it is.
in other news, I do have a lot of other content on the way, so look out for that. If you want to keep updated with everything I'm doing, follow me on Twitter at ForeverShifty. I'm also streaming both Saturdays and Sundays. My computer's not good enough to do R6 yet, so we usually end up doing like DBZ Kakarot or Dyson Sphere program. So if you want to come chat with me, that's where you can do it. Once again, I hope you guys enjoyed, and before I go, I have one more thing to say. Canadian, please get the cams next time.
So please, just leave me alone. I'd much rather stay in and be at home. Got too many friends that they cool, they lit, but my bed look nice with me on that phone. I'm a shy guy with the mask on tight. Peach booty queen in my bed all night. Bummy looking like I popped out a green ass pipe in this crib, how I live my life. Let's go. Popped out of bed in the morning, laid there till my phone got boring.